I'm Amrita Patil, and today we are going to see exceptions in Java. So, by name, what is the exception? Exception is nothing but any abnormal condition which arises in a code sequence at the runtime. So, okay, normally what happens if suppose we are planning something, that is our daily routine is something that I will go to college, I will study it and all and all. Okay, so there is a different there is a definite sequence of the processes which we do in daily life. Okay, if someday or sometime if I'm not feeling well, okay, so that is also exception. Okay, sometime if suppose while going to college suddenly my bike stopped. Okay, so that is nothing but an exception. That is the abnormal condition in my daily process and in my daily routine. Like that one in that like that we are also having some abnormal conditions in the softwares also. Okay, so suppose in the code execution time, if suppose if there is no inverter, there is no backup. Okay, so like that one, so we can say that is a type of a exception. Okay, like suppose also I can give the example. You have written a code to execute a particular functionality, but logically or by some technical issue, if suppose that code is not behaving expect as per the expectation, or the actual input is differing what is the expected, so that I can call it as a exception. Okay, exception is an object that describes the exceptional, okay, that is a error condition which is occurred in a piece of a code. Okay, exceptions are essential for managing the errors and issues that can arise in a code. Okay, I am running my code, but somehow it is not behaving properly or not behaving as expected. So, what the exceptions will do? So, by using the exception handling, we can manage that errors and the issue and can track why that issue is occurred or where that issue is occurred. So, for that, we are going to see what is the exception, how I can do exception handling in my Java code. Okay, so there is a one class that is a throwable. Okay, so under that I'm having the exception. Okay, so what are the types of the exception under the throwable class? So throwable is a parent of, you can say, all exceptions which are having. Okay, so throwable, in the throwable I have mainly two types: exceptions and the errors. Okay, or okay, so let's see further. Okay, you will get to know. Okay, so I'm explaining what is exception, but what are the reasons that we can get the exception in my code? So there are multiple options, the multiple scenarios where I can get the exception. Like invalid user input. If I'm given the invalid user input, then that the system is expected from the user. It can be a device failure. It may be due to the loss of internet network connection, or it is having some of the physical limitations. That means if I'm having only suppose 2 GB RAM, and I'm dealing with the multiple operations at a time and it will need more disk space, in that case I can have the exception. Okay, that is due to the physical limitations, or it is due to the code errors which in my code, if any error is there, I can have the exception in that case also. Opening an unavailable file. Okay, so if I'm trying in the file exceptionally, if I am dealing with the files and I am referring to a file which is not available in the system, at that time also I can get a exception. Okay, so we will see now what is the exception hierarchy. As I said, there is a throwable class which is a parent of all the exceptions. So before that, what I will be having the parent of all the Java classes, that is the object class. Okay, so in the object I am having a throwable. Okay, and in throwable I have exceptions, I have error. There are two types. Okay, what are the exceptions? In the exceptions there are again two types: checked exceptions and unchecked exception. So we'll see what is the checked exception and unchecked exception. In the checked exception, I am having the IO or the compile time exception. Okay, so basic difference, that is what is the checked and unchecked, we will see later in the further slides. Okay, except exceptions, we are also having a particular type, that is the error. Okay, what is the error? That is the unavoidable conditions or uncaught, what you can say, the errors which you cannot handle, exceptions you cannot handle. So that is virtual machine error or the assertion error. Okay, so now we'll see what is the checked exception. Checked exceptions are the compile time exceptions. Okay, that means if suppose I'm writing one code, okay, and I know that this may happen, or okay, in that particular code sequence, then and that can be what you can say, that you can assume while writing the code, okay, or that is the compile time. So the compiler, at the compilation time only, the compiler will say, okay, you have to call this exception. So this is called as the checked exception. Okay, as I have given the example, if suppose I'm going to a college and I missed my bus. Okay, so for that, what I can do, so I need to proceed for the college the 5 minutes prior, so that I will reach in time before the bus. Okay, so that the bus will not miss. Okay, so that we can have, that is a checked exception. Okay, or the compile time exception. So compiler only find out what is the exception I can have in the particular code, and the checked exception should be declared in the method signature and should be handled. Okay, if I'm saying that if this exception can occur, may occur in the code, that I need to handle that. Okay, for example, file not found exception. If suppose I'm referring to a file, then I need to take care that that file is available, that should be available, or if it is not available, then I should give a user that this is the exception which you can get, that is file not found exception, and I can take care the remaining or the consequences, or if the file is not there, then I can use the another file or the default file, like that one I can handle that. IO exceptions, SQL, in case of database handling, I can have the SQL exceptions. Okay, if I'm going to use any database classes, then I need to take care of the exceptions which may arise in that handling of the databases. Okay, now what are the unchecked exception? Okay, though I have taken the care, like I have I reached in the bus at the bus stop 5 minutes prior, bus is also come on time. Okay, but in the middle of the journey, if there is a breakdown in that bus, so what is that? That is the unchecked exception, that I cannot predict that one. So this is the runtime exception you can call. Okay. So in C++, all the exceptions are unchecked exception by default. Okay. Or you can say that are only unchecked. Okay. But in the Java, I can have the checked exception, unchecked, and the errors. Okay. So these exceptions, the unchecked exceptions, are usually caused by the programming errors, such as attempting to access the index out of bound. Okay, so if suppose I am having an array of suppose 5 capacity or the 5 size, and I am referring to the eighth element in that array. Okay, so that is the unchecked exception, right? So that particular accessing that particular index, I cannot predict it in the compile time. So it will occur in the uh, at the runtime. Okay, or it may be a divide by zero. I cannot uh, uh, divide a number by a zero. So if I'm doing that, it will give unchecked exception divide by zero. Some of the examples of unchecked are array index, out of bound, null pointer, and the arithmetic. Okay. So what are the common scenarios of the Java exceptions? Okay. So I have listed out this. A scenario where arithmetic exception occur, that is the divide by zero. If I'm dividing a number by zero, that is the arithmetic exception. If I'm doing some operations with the null value, if I'm having a string s which is initialized to null, and if I'm calculating the length of that string, Okay, so that will give me the null pointer exception because I am dealing with the null. Okay, a scenario where the number format exception. Okay, what is that? Suppose I am having a string ABC and I am parsing that ABC to the integer. So that will again give me the number format because I cannot convert this string to the integer, right? It is not compatible type. Okay, or the last scenario is the array out of bound. As I explained, if suppose I am having a array having the capacity 5, okay, and if I'm trying to access the 10th index from that array, okay, then it can give me the array out of bound exception. Okay, now we have seen checked exception, unchecked exception. There is another type uh, from the throwable, that is exception and errors. Okay, so what are the errors? Errors are typically cannot be handled by the application itself. Okay, if in my application, okay, if any serious conditions occur or any serious issues, mostly it will happen with the JVM or the system environment. If the JVM crashes and all that, so that is called as the errors that the developer can't do anything in that respect. Okay, errors are not meant to be caught or recovered from. If an error occurs, then the your program will exit automatically. Okay, without any giving any error or without giving any message to the user. Okay, so that is the error. Example like out of memory, stack overflow, or the virtual machine error. Okay, so this type of errors which we cannot recover or which we cannot caught like we do in the exception. Okay, so what are the benefits of the exception handling? So one thing, it is a structured error handling. So from the code itself, you can see like in which part of a code I can have the errors. If that error occur, how can I handle that? So that is a structured one. It will avoid the crashing if something wrong happens with my code. Okay, it will give the separation of concerns. You can say it is a modular one, that is I'm having a try catch and all block that we'll see in the next videos. Okay, I can have the debugging. If I'm doing the exception handling, then I can debug my code where my code got wrong. Okay, where my scenario goes wrong, like that one. Custom error reporting, if any exception occurs, then I can prompt your developer that due to this is happens. Okay, if suppose it is a number format exception, then I can give the user the print stack, and the user can also get know that what the error is, what it fail, or what is the actual error. Okay, I can have the exception propagation. Okay, I can throw the exception. I can have the custom exceptions also. Okay, so I can propagate the exceptions which are occurring. I can have the more robustness as I am handling the errors and exceptions in my code. It will give a consistency to my code. On it is a fail fast principle that I can have the early detection of the errors which are going to which are may going to rise in my code. Okay, so what are the potential drawbacks? Like performance overhead, code complexity will be there. Overuse of checked exception will be a problem. Okay, lack of checked exception propagation. If you are handling the exceptions, then you should propagate that in a particular manner, in a planned manner. Okay, difficulty in handling the multiple exceptions. If there are multiple exceptions that can occur in a particular code, then you need to do it wisely, otherwise it is difficult to handle. Okay, or the challenges can occur in the resource cleanup. If you are using multiple resources, closing, opening and all, so it is a little bit challenging for doing the resource management. Difficulty in testing exception scenario. Okay, so we have seen the checked exception and unchecked exception. Now we will see programmatically or demo, like what is the checked exception. So as we see, checked exceptions are at the compile time. Okay, so if there is an exception in my code, then the compiler should prompt me that yes, you are having, you may arise exception here in this code and you need to handle this. Okay, so if suppose I have a class checked exception demo, in that I'm in main method, I'm dealing with some file. Okay, file, by using file reader, file is equal to new file reader, and I'm giving some file path here. Okay, now I'm using the file reader. Now my compiler is giving me the warning or the error, you can say, unhandled exception. Okay, java.io.file not found exception. That is, when I'm using a file reader, then I need to handle the exception for the file not found. Okay, so what I can do, I need to caught this exception. Okay, so the way I can caught, we will see in the coming videos. Okay, after that also, in the buffer reader, I'm taking that file and I'm reading the lines from that file. So for that, I have used here file input dot read line. Again, I'm reading the line. Okay, so the compiler think that okay, if that file is not there, and how you are going to do the how you will going to read that line by line. Okay, so that only I will it will come a checked exception, like add a exception, the unhandled exception, java.io.io exception. If I'm closing that particular resource, yes, it is a resource, buffer reader file, like that one. So I need to close that. While closing also, I need to take care. I need to check whether that file is available, whether that is opened. If it is closed, how I can close that. So I need to handle the exception. Okay, so this is the example of checked exception. Okay, now, what is unchecked exception? Okay, so I am having here the same code. Okay, but now I'm going to throw this exception, throw the IO exception. Okay, so in the exception handling, we are having try, catch, finally, throw, and throws keywords. Okay, so as a part of that, I'm throwing an exception here in the method signature only. Okay, so if suppose now the compiler is not giving me any checked exception. Okay, now I can run this program. Oh, so what it happened, file not found, because in the my system there is no file named as a a.txt in my test in my C drive. Okay, so now I got an exception in thread main. Okay, and this I'm having at the runtime, so it is called as the runtime exception or unchecked exception. Okay, though I'm throwing it, okay, if anything happens here, I need to throw the IO exception. Okay, so it is caught in the main method. So it is giving me exception in thread main java.io.file not found exception. What is that? The system cannot find the which is the path which you have specified here. Okay, got this? So this is the checked exception and an unchecked exception. Okay, now check our understanding. What is the purpose of exception handling in Java? Okay, to enhance the code readability? No. To handle the errors and the exception gracefully? What do you think? Yes. Okay, to add the unnecessary complexity? No. To introduce new feature to the program? No. So what is the correct option here? To handle the errors and the exception gracefully. Okay. The next question, which type of exception is checked at the runtime, compile time? Okay, what is the, just now we have seen the example. Okay, which is checked at the compile time? Yes, checked exception. What are the potential drawbacks of using the exception in Java? Improved code readability, performance overhead, better code organization, increased code complexity. What will be the correct option? That is, what will be the potential drawback? Yes, performance overhead. Okay. Now, these are some of the questions Okay, what is checked exception, non-checked exception, what is the parent of exception, what is the main purpose of exception, that we have discussed in the in this video. Okay, so just try to recall that. Okay. Okay, thank you, happy learning.